Hey guys, welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge. My name is Jake, and today we've got another knife by Sanrenmu, the 9211. This is one of their lowest priced new full-size folders that they've been coming out in 2020. We've got 8CR13 AMBI steel, which I like. G10 handle scales, I like G10. Stainless steel liners. Sanrenmu usually uses 420 stainless steel for the liners. You know, the steel that the cheap manufacturers use for the blades? Yeah, they put it on as liners. And backspacer. If you're interested in a full-size folder, deep carry pocket clip, thumb ramp deployment, AMBI lock. Did I say AMBI lock? Axis lock? Yeah, I can see why they'd need to change the name to AMBI lock instead of axis lock, but inside, the technology is at least 99.9% the same. So stick around, the full review is coming right now. So here she is. Well, maybe it's a he, I don't know. It is a thing of beauty. It's got very sleek lines. It's got that very Japanese form, long, slender. It's got sort of it's a take on a Japanese tanto. It's sort of like a Japanese tanto in several ways. And that long, sleek, unbroken line, it's one of the reasons why I'm sure they chose to use a thumb ramp, so that, look at that line, it just stays nice and clean. This wave that starts, a wave that starts up here and comes down, and then it crests again a little bit, and then it comes down, and it's just, it's an awesome form. And the cutting edge, you know, this side, a little bit angular. There's an angle there on that end. So they put an angle here on this end. And then we've got the negative, the recurve of the wave here. And that's sort of a wave too. I don't think they have intended this to have a distinct step. It's not like a tanto. It is like a tanto, but it's not like a tanto. It has two distinct grinds, one at the tip area and one on the main section, the main bevel. And then there's always a clear line right there. They decided not to do that. And I've already mentioned this on a different Sanrenmu as well that's done the same way. And the other things just flow through. See, like this wedge, it flows through that transition area and just keeps going. Of course, it's changing directions. It's getting wider and wider and wider. It hits that spot and starts getting more narrow. But I think they left it smooth so that the lines stay sort of unbroken. I just think that they chose a thumb disc to help that line just stay really, really smooth through there. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's try to measure it. And one way to measure it is this way. Ontario Rat 1, line up the pivot pins, and what do we find? We find that the handle's a tiny bit longer, only because of the little orange bit of this backspacer cum lanyard hole. Sticks out a little bit more. And then the blade lengths, they come very close to the same, but of course the sharp edges, if we start the sharp edges together, you can see there's about 7 millimeters more, about a quarter of an inch more cutting edge on this guy. Let's start more on the details with the blade now. Since there is no transition there, there is something happening there. Not since. There is no transition on the bevel that you can clearly see, but there is a change going on. You can see clearly using this flat that the flat ends, let's grab a pen so we can be more specific, ends right about there. But then it stays, this line here stays about straight. And then here is where it takes a curve up. And that's right in line with where that is. You know, down, flat, and up. At that spot, that's where the thickness of the blade starts to change too. See if I can get the ink to... There we go. That's what I should have done. There's no distinct line there, so I drew one in. And it goes up like this, and it goes across like that. And now if we take a look at this, we notice that it is in this area here that the thickness starts to taper down and just start losing it. Comes thinner and thinner. Up to this point, if you look at the thickness, not the swedge end, but the thickness right here, that's the same thickness all the way back. So it makes for a strong tipped blade, and we've got a nice belly that we can use. We've got a very distinct tip that we can use, and we've got a long straight cutting stretch, where if we're just slicing through stuff, we're just slicing through it. So put that away. So we've got a long blade. We've got 8C13 MOV. That's got a Rockwell hardness 55 to 58, around 57 quite often, which is pretty good. We've got, the nice swedge helps give that look, make it look like it's more a trailing point than it is. It's a slight trailing point. It does come up a bit. I should do it probably this way. You see it does come up a bit, but it looks like it comes up more than it really does because of that swedge. So it's got a good artistic feature that way. Thumb disc, it's a fairly standard thumb disc that I've seen many times, but it's effective and it looks good and it's secure. Makes it ambidextrous, right and left-handed. I missed one spot on the blade, right here. It's got a huge, well, it's sort of like a sharpener's choil, but sort of not like a sharpener's choil because it has to end a certain way for this lock to work. It gives removal of material all the way up to the end of the plunge, and it's a gradual plunge. But it makes it easy to sharpen the knife cleanly right to the end, so that's good. So now let's get to the handle. Put that in so I got one less thing to worry about. So the handle starts off, fairly narrow. It's less than an inch, and it just has a slow arc where they come closer together to the tail. And of course, it looks like a small katana, a Japanese sword. And one type of Japanese sword, there's loads of them. It's roughly reminiscent of that kind of look, and it looks very Japanese to me. They did a good job with little things like they removed a little bit of G10 right there on both sides, and it helps that index finger come around the way I like. Other than that, it's flat handle scales, flat slabs, keep the price down. Everything's chamfered, so there's nothing sharp. And that brings us to the pocket clip. It's a deep carry pocket clip, but it's right side only, tip up. It's got a little bit of decorative effect or maybe just weight reduction. And they used flat top screws instead of button screws. Let's show you the pocket clip in action. There we go. Pocket clip reaches the pants pocket, and it's got enough pressure that it takes a little bit extra pressure to push it down, unlike the kind that just sort of feel loose and then they fall. But I like that. It makes the pocket clip very secure. It's got a good amount of tension down here. It holds well, and just that little lip up, it's nice and round. Didn't bother me. There was no issues with how it feels in the hand. Just a well-made pocket clip. It's just too bad they didn't make it right and left friendly. Oh, I do like the lanyard hole. I haven't talked about that yet. It gives good access to paracord without making it bulk up when you tie it off. It's got a nice color for it. It's got a nice attractive look to it. And of course, you can get this knife in orange and brown G10. Although right now, every place I checked is sold out of the brown. Amazon.com and AliExpress are basically the same price within a few cents. So if you're in United States, then buy it from Amazon.com. But everywhere else, they're not going to ship to you, at least the countries I checked. So you may as well buy it from AliExpress. One of the things where I see where they skimped on the price just a little bit too is a button screw on the pivot. it's an odd look in there. I think it would have done better with a flat head screw. That's just a little compromise. You know, the flat G10, the button screws, 8CR13 MOV, and yeah, if they would just, I think they should do this same knife in a step higher, maybe a couple steps higher. You know, one step higher, have 3D milled G10 or rounded, anyways, 3D milled. Maybe your choice of 2 or 3 different colors of backspacer, and maybe a Sandvik steel, you know, and they could sell those things like hotcakes. I think this low-priced knife isn't enough. Let's wipe that off. Yeah, isn't enough like a user. What I mean by that is I think those people that commonly buy $20 knives, they want them to be able to work as well as look good. And this really doesn't have that kind of work thing, because when I did my testing, the blade performed very, very well. But the handle is so thin and narrow and small that, you know, I just try to, you know, it just gets tiring and hot and hard. So I think this knife is more, this design is better suited for the market that's a little bit higher, you know, getting into the $40 and $50 and $60 market. I think they would really like this thing with, of course, with several upgrades. Now let's go over all the sizes and all that other stuff, and we'll be talking about that. And this is on the screen. When you see this, leave the screen. I'm done talking about sizes, dimensions, and those kinds of bits of information. Let's begin with the weight of this knife, 84 grams. That's 3 ounces, almost exactly, very close. The factory sharpness of this edge, 155 bes. That's very good. And yeah, it did perform well in my testing, like I've said. The length of the cutting edge, so tip, straight diagonal line across to the sharpness choil, 9.16 centimeters, 3.61 inches. The blade length, tip to the closest spot on the handle, 9.1 centimeters, 3.58 inches. So over 3.5 inches on the blade. That's nice. The thickness of the blade, 3.02 millimeters. That's 0.1185. So a little bit under 1/8 of an inch, but not much. The blade depth, and I measured about 1 inch up from the sharpness choil, 2.06 centimeters. That's 0.811 inches. The thickness behind the grind, so at that same spot right there where my thumbnail is, 0.46 millimeters. That's 17/1000ths of an inch. That explains why it helped slice so very well. And now for the grind angles. I don't know which side's which because they're so close. 17.8 degrees on one side, 18.1 degrees on the other side, and the grind angle around the tip here is very consistent. So whoever sharpened this knife did a very good job. And I'm modifying what I think. I used to say that 20 degrees per side was really good for EDC knives and for steel like 8CR13. I'm starting to think 18 degrees, 17.5 degrees per side of 8CR13 is just fine. If it's heat treated well, it handles that, and that makes it slice that a little bit much better. The handle length now, and I'm including the lanyard hole backspacer piece right at the end, 12.2 centimeters, 4.8 inches. The grip area in here, it's just a little over 10 centimeters, a bit over 4 inches. The handle thickness, not counting the pocket clip, 1.14 centimeters. That's 0.448 of an inch, so fairly narrow. The handle depth, it's biggest right up here, as I mentioned before. That is 2.28 centimeters, 0.898, so 1/10 of an inch, 9/10 of an inch right there. When it's closed, it's widest right here, and that is 2.63 centimeters, 1.035 inches. The total length of this knife, from tip to the very end of the lanyard hole here, 21.29 centimeters, 8.38 inches. So I think this knife could handle being a little bit bigger yet. I think that would make the grip a little bit more comfortable, but I think this knife would also do well in a smaller size. You know, a 3-inch blade, I think that would be a great I wouldn't call it a gentleman's knife, but it'd be a nice, good size length blade and still a very usable kind of thing for, urban EDC. This is not an outdoorsman knife. It is clearly a knife that is, more of an urban kind of carry, or, just kind of knife that you enjoy, playing with, owning. It's not so much a user, I don't think, but that's just my opinion. So to summarize, I think the design is very well done. For the price point, they did a very good job with the materials, the fit and finish. It all fits that just fine. And a few little areas, I wish they would have changed that screw right there to a flathead screw. Using button screws that are recessed in G10, that's super common these days right now. Best Tech's doing it, and those knives cost, $52 and up. Just about anybody and everybody is doing it except for, I think, Civivi. They're owned by WE, and I think they make their own screws, and so they've got nice flat screws. I think I've got a Civivi handy. Let me go get one. Here we go. This is a budget Civivi, and take a look at those screws. They're sort of flat. They're not that rounded button screw. They're even T8s instead of T6s. And that just looks a whole lot nicer to me than that. And this is, a budget knife. This is not an expensive knife. It's a slip joint and, similar kind of size. But they can put that nice hardware on it at a budget price and, just have two little holes, nothing dramatic. I think they could have done the same thing here, a left and right pocket clip. And I think more and more companies need to follow what Civivi has for their budget screws because they've shown us that it clearly can be done. And it's just a whole lot neater. It just looks a whole lot nicer than a sunk button screw. And then you've got, a little hole that will just, collect dirt and dust and lint and stuff. So I like that. I like this backspacer here. I wouldn't mind if they give you a couple color options. Somebody might not like orange, but so an all blacked out version would be nice, maybe with a black wash, acid wash blade. All kinds of nice things. Sanrenmu, if anybody from Sanrenmu is listening, this design is very good. I hope you do more things with it. I think it can be really big for you guys. I like this knife. If you have any questions, comments, leave them down below, please. Or if you just want to thank me for the video, I appreciate all the comments. Leaving comments really does make a difference, so thank you so much for that. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys are great. And remember, friends, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Bye for now.